The blizzard screamed against the cabin walls as Emma Chun, CEO of Meridian Technologies, stood trembling before the one man who owed her nothing. Her Armani suit clung to her skin like ice, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Please don't make me undress," she begged, arms wrapped tight around herself. Marcus Winters looked at his former boss with eyes as cold as the storm outside. "I don't have a choice," he said quietly, reaching for the wool blanket draped over the chair. "You'll die of hypothermia in those clothes." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. 3 months ago, Emma had sat behind her mahogany desk and fired him, dismissing his struggles as a grieving single father with a single word: liability. Now her life was in his hands. If you're captivated by this story of redemption and second chances, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us what country you're watching from. Your support keeps these heartfelt stories coming. Emma Chun had built an empire on ice. At 35, she commanded a corner office overlooking Manhattan, a salary most could only dream of, and the fear-tinged respect of every employee at Meridian Technologies. The boardroom was her kingdom, efficiency her religion. Emotions were weakness, and Emma Chun had no weaknesses. Her staff whispered "Ice Queen" behind closed doors, a title she wore like armor. Marcus Winters had once been her golden boy, the software engineer whose code had transformed Meridian from startup to industry titan. But tragedy doesn't respect deadlines. When his wife Sophia died suddenly, Marcus became the sole parent to 5-year-old Lily. School emergencies replaced late-night coding sessions. Doctor appointments competed with product launches. Emma's patience evaporated like morning frost. "I need someone who can commit 100%, she told him, her voice surgical as she slid the severance envelope across polished wood. "Meridian can't afford deadweight, Marcus. Not even yours." He nodded once, collected his belongings, and left without argument. Lily needed him. Fighting would have to wait. The rage came later, in the quiet darkness after tucking his daughter into bed, as bills piled up and job prospects dwindled. Now, 3 months later, Emma had been driving to a critical investor meeting when Vermont's mountains swallowed her in white. Her rental car died in a snowbank, cell service vanished, and the temperature plummeted. The cabin emerging through the blizzard seemed like salvation, until Marcus Winters opened the door and Emma's carefully constructed world shattered completely. Emma Chin's morning routine was a masterpiece of precision. Wake at 5 a.m., Peloton for 45 minutes. Green smoothie, no sugar. By 7:30, she was in her corner office, heels clicking against marble like a metronome of ambition. The view from the 42nd floor stretched across Manhattan, a kingdom of glass and steel that bent to her will. Meridian Technologies had been her religion for a decade. She'd clawed her way from junior analyst to CEO, sacrificing sleep, relationships, and softness along the way. Her ex-fiancé had called her emotionally unavailable before leaving. Her sister stopped inviting her to family dinners. Emma told herself it was the price of excellence. Sentiment was a luxury she couldn't afford. The day she fired Marcus Winters had started like any other. Coffee black, quarterly reports flawless. But his project timeline had slipped again, the 3rd time that month. When he knocked on her door, she already had the severance paperwork ready. "Sit," she'd said, not looking up from her screen. Marcus had looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, shadows carved beneath his eyes. "Emma, I know the Richardson project is behind. Lily's been struggling since Sophia died, and the school keeps calling. I don't need your story, Marcus." Her voice could have frozen vodka. "I need results. You were brilliant once. Past tense. I just need flexibility. A few more weeks to..." Meridian can't afford dead weight. She slid the envelope across her desk like a chess piece. "I'm sure you understand. It's just business." He'd stared at the envelope for a long moment, something dying behind his eyes. Then he'd simply nodded, stood, and walked out. Emma had returned to her spreadsheets within minutes, already forgetting his face. Efficiency demanded sacrifice. She'd made hers long ago. She never imagined she'd one day have to pay for it. The investor meeting in Burlington was supposed to be a formality. Emma had charmed venture capitalists from Silicon Valley to Singapore. A handful of New England tech moguls would be child's play. She'd rented a Mercedes, dismissed her assistant's concerns about the weather forecast, and left Manhattan at noon with her presentation loaded and her confidence bulletproof. The snow started as she crossed into Vermont, gentle flakes that seemed almost picturesque against the mountain landscape. Emma barely noticed, reviewing talking points while the GPS guided her north. By the time she reached the winding mountain roads, the flakes had become a wall of white. Her phone buzzed. Meeting postponed due to weather. Roads closing. Seek shelter immediately. Emma's jaw tightened. She'd driven through worse. She was 30 minutes from Burlington, perhaps less. The Ice Queen didn't retreat because of snow. The Mercedes disagreed. On a hairpin turn, the wheels lost contact with reality. Emma's stomach lurched as the car pirouetted in slow motion, her hands useless on the wheel. The world became a blur of white and gray before the sickening crunch of impact. The vehicle settled at a 45-degree angle, half buried in a snowbank, utterly immobile. Emma tried the ignition. Dead. She reached for her phone. No service. The temperature gauge on the dashboard read 18 degrees and dropping. Panic, unfamiliar and sharp, clawed at her chest. She was alone on a mountain road in a blizzard, wearing a suit designed for boardrooms, not survival. Through the snow-crusted window, she spotted a shape in the distance. A cabin, smoke rising from its chimney like a promise. Emma forced the door open against the wind and stumbled into the storm. Ice bit through her designer clothes. Each step felt like wading through concrete. The cabin grew closer, salvation materializing through the whiteout. She reached the door and knocked with numb fists. It opened, and Marcus Winters stared back at her. You. The word fell from Marcus's lips like a stone into still water. Recognition and disbelief warred across his features as he stood in the doorway, backlit by warm firelight that seemed to belong to another universe entirely. Emma's teeth chattered so violently she could barely speak. Marcus! I didn't know anyone was here. His eyes traveled over her with clinical detachment, taking inventory of her ruin. The Armani suit plastered to her frame, the Louboutin heels caked in ice and mud, the careful blonde highlights now stringy and dark with melted snow. Clearly, he said, come in before you freeze to death. The cabin was small, but mercifully warm. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls decorated with crayon drawings, stick figures holding hands beneath a crooked sun. A child's pink backpack sat by the couch, and Emma's heart stuttered with realization. Lily's asleep in the bedroom. Marcus said, following her gaze. We're here while I interview for a position at the Burlington Tech Hub. Not quite Meridian Technologies, but they understand that parents occasionally need to leave at 3 o'clock. The barb landed precisely where he'd aimed it. Emma stood dripping onto the wooden floor, shivering so hard her vision blurred at the edges. Marcus's expression shifted from cold satisfaction to something else. Concern, perhaps, or merely the instinct of a decent person confronted with suffering. You need to get out of those wet clothes. Your core temperature is dropping. I'm fine. The lie rattled through her chattering teeth. Just need the fire. That suit is soaked through. You know how hypothermia works. He moved toward a chest in the corner, pulling out a thick wool blanket and folded clothes. I'll get you something dry. The thought of being vulnerable here, before him, made Emma's remaining composure crack. Please, she whispered, don't make me undress. Marcus stood before her, the blanket and clothes draped over his arm like an offering, or a demand. Emma watched conflict flicker across his face, the memory of her cold dismissal wrestling with something more human, more immediate. I don't have a choice, he finally said, his voice stripped of emotion. Neither of us does. Emma wanted to argue, to summon the authority that made boardrooms fall silent, but her body was betraying her. The shivering had become violent, uncontrollable. Her fingers were wax, her lips likely blue. She knew the signs. Hypothermia didn't negotiate with CEOs. I'll turn around, Marcus continued, setting the clothes on the couch. Give you privacy. There's the blanket and my flannel shirt and sweatpants. They'll be big, but they're warm. He moved to the small kitchen area, his back deliberately angled away. I'll make tea. Emma stared at the clothes as if they were a trap. Her armor, the tailored suit that cost $3,000, the silk blouse that signaled power, the heels that added 3 inches to her height and a decade to her authority, had become her prison. Peeling it away felt like skinning herself alive. Her numb fingers fumbled with buttons. The wet fabric clung stubbornly, and tears of frustration burned her eyes. The mighty Emma Chun, who negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, couldn't manage her own zipper. When the suit finally puddled at her feet, she felt naked in ways that had nothing to do with clothing. Marcus's flannel swallowed her frame, the sleeves extending past her hands like a child playing dress-up. The sweatpants required rolling 3 times. Wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket, Emma sank onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over her like a second storm. "Thank you," she managed when Marcus turned with a steaming mug. He nodded once, taking the armchair across from her. The distance between them felt like miles, or perhaps inches. "Storm's supposed to last through tomorrow," he said. "Roads are already closed." The voice came soft as snowfall from the hallway. "Daddy." Emma's head snapped up. A small figure emerged from the bedroom, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. The girl couldn't have been more than 5, with Marcus's dark hair and eyes still heavy with sleep. She wore princess pajamas and mismatched socks. "Hey, Lilybug." Marcus's voice transformed, all the ice melting into something warm and achingly tender. "What are you doing up? I heard talking." Lily's gaze found Emma, curiosity replacing sleepiness. "Who's that lady in your clothes, Daddy?" Emma felt pinned by that innocent stare. This was the reason. The emergency calls, the missed deadlines, the liability she dismissed with a signature. This child, who'd lost her mother and nearly lost her father because Emma Chun couldn't see past quarterly projections. "This is Miss Emma," Marcus said carefully. "Her car got stuck in the snow. She's going to stay here until the storm passes." Lily padded closer, rabbit dragging behind her. "Did you get scared?" "I get scared in storms sometimes. But Daddy says we're safe together." Yes," Emma heard herself say. "I was scared. You can have some of my blanket if you want." "Daddy says sharing makes the scared go away." Lily climbed onto the couch beside Emma with the fearless trust of childhood, pressing against her side. The warmth was startling, not just physical, but something deeper, something Emma had forgotten existed. Marcus watched from his chair, his expression unreadable. Emma looked down at the small head, now resting against her shoulder, at the tiny fingers that had unconsciously grasped her oversized sleeve. "Lily, let Miss Emma rest," Marcus said gently. "It's okay," Emma whispered, surprised to find she meant it. "She can stay." For the first time in years, Emma Chun felt the weight of what she'd almost destroyed. Lily had eventually drifted back to sleep, curled against Emma like a warm comma. Marcus carried his daughter to bed, and when he returned, the cabin felt different, smaller, more intimate. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the room in amber shadows. Emma nursed her 3rd cup of tea, the warmth finally reaching her bones. The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable, but no longer hostile. "Why did you come to Vermont?" Marcus asked finally, his voice low. "In a blizzard, for a meeting that could have been rescheduled." Emma stared into her mug. "Because I don't reschedule. Because showing up when others won't is how you win." She paused, the words tasting bitter. "Because stopping feels like falling." Falling from what? The question hung in the air. Emma had spent years avoiding it, burying it under achievements and accolades. But something about this night, the storm, the vulnerability, the small girl who'd offered her blanket without hesitation, had cracked something open. "I grew up in a studio apartment in Queens," she said quietly. "My mother cleaned offices at night. My father left when I was 6. I wore Goodwill clothes and learned to ignore the way other kids looked at me." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "I was hungry a lot. Not starving, but aware. Always aware of what we didn't have." Marcus listened without interruption. "I promised myself I'd never be powerless again. never dependent. Never. She trailed off, then forced herself to continue. Never human enough to be hurt. So I built walls, made myself untouchable. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that walls keep things out, but they also lock you in. She finally met his eyes. I became the thing I was most afraid of. Cold, unfeeling. Someone who could look at a grieving father and see only numbers on a spreadsheet. Dead weight, Marcus said softly. Emma flinched. Dead weight. Morning arrived with blinding brightness, the storm having exhausted itself overnight. Lily bounced into the main room like a pinball, pressing her nose against the frost-etched window. Daddy, look. So much snow. Can we build a snowman? Please, please, please. Marcus glanced at Emma, who sat wrapped in a blanket, her borrowed clothes rumpled from sleep. Roads won't be clear until this afternoon anyway, he said. You up for some fresh air? Emma couldn't remember the last time she'd built a snowman. Elementary school, perhaps, before ambition had consumed everything soft in her. I don't have proper clothes. I've got an extra jacket. Boots might be big, but they'll work. Marcus's tone was neutral, but something in his eyes suggested this was a test. Would the Ice Queen thaw enough to play with a child? 20 minutes later, Emma stood in the blinding white landscape, drowning in Marcus's winter coat, her feet swimming in his spare boots. Lily had already started rolling snow, her laughter cutting through the crisp air like bells. Miss Emma, you make the middle part. Daddy does the head 'cause he's tallest. Emma knelt in the snow, her designer nails hidden beneath borrowed gloves, and began to push. The snowball grew heavier, more real. Lily coached her with the seriousness of a foreman, instructing her on technique and trajectory. When Emma's ball wobbled and nearly collapsed, she found herself laughing, actually laughing, at the absurdity of it all. Marcus hoisted the head onto their creation. Lily produced a carrot from her pocket like a magician, along with rocks for eyes and a crooked stick smile. He looks happy, Lily declared. Emma stared at the lopsided snowman, at the child beaming beside it, at Marcus watching them both with something almost like forgiveness in his expression. Her chest felt strange, tight, and full simultaneously. Yeah, Emma whispered. He does. The plow came through just after lunch, its orange lights flashing against the white landscape like a promise of return to normalcy. Emma watched from the window as the road transformed from impassable to merely treacherous, feeling something close to grief. Her phone, finally charged, had exploded with messages. 73 emails. 14 missed calls. The world she'd left behind, demanding her return. But for the first time in her career, Emma wasn't in a rush to answer. Marcus stood beside her, coffee in hand. Should be safe to drive in an hour or so. I can give you a ride to town, help you sort out a rental. Marcus! Emma turned to face him, Lily's cheerful humming drifting from the bedroom where she was packing her backpack. Before we go back, I need to say something. He waited, his expression carefully neutral. I want you to come back to Meridian. Not the old position, something better. VP of Engineering, with a team under you. She spoke quickly before courage could fail her. Full remote flexibility. 4-day work weeks, if that's what Lily needs. I'm restructuring the entire company culture, starting with acknowledging that humans aren't machines, and loss doesn't make someone expendable. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Is this guilt talking? Because you feel bad about one night? No. Emma met his eyes. This is clarity talking. I've been building a company that would have fired me if I'd been in your shoes. That's not strength. It's cruelty dressed up as efficiency. She paused. I want to build something different. Something that doesn't require people to choose between excellence and humanity. But I need someone who understands both to help me do it. Someone who's lived the cost of my old way. I'll need it in writing, Marcus said slowly. Every policy, every protection. I'll have my lawyer draft it today. He extended his hand. Emma shook it, feeling the weight of a second chance. 2 weeks later, Emma stood in her corner office, but the view looked different now. The glass and steel kingdom hadn't changed, but the woman reflected in the window had. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Miss Chun, Marcus Winters and his daughter are here. Emma's heart did something complicated. Send them in. The door opened, and Marcus entered in business casual, confidence restored but softened somehow. Lily clutched his hand, eyes wide as moons as she took in the 42nd floor view. Wow, the little girl breathed. You can see everything from up here. Almost everything, Emma said, crouching to Lily's level. The important stuff is usually closer than you think. She'd spent the past 2 weeks dismantling her empire and rebuilding it with different blueprints. Flexible hours were now policy, not privilege. Parental leave had tripled. The executive team had initially resisted until Emma made it clear, adapt or leave. 3 had left. She didn't miss them. Marcus surveyed the office, his gaze landing on the small changes. A couch where the intimidating conference table had been, photographs on the walls showing employees with their families, a corner with toys for visiting children. You meant it, he said quietly. Every word. Emma stood, straightening her suit, still designer, still powerful, but worn differently now. Armor she could remove. Your office is next door. I had them install a desk with art supplies for Lily. For days when school's closed, or she just wants to be near her dad. Lily tugged Marcus's sleeve. Can I work with you, Daddy? Sometimes, Lilybug. He looked at Emma, and something passed between them. Not romance, but recognition. 2 people who'd survived their own blizzards and chosen warmth over ice. Welcome back, Emma said. Marcus smiled. Welcome back to you too. Outside, spring was coming. Inside, it had already arrived. That's the end of our story. If these heartfelt moments touched you, please subscribe and drop a comment telling us what country you're watching from. We love hearing from our global community. Your support means everything, and we have so many more stories of unexpected love and transformation coming your way.